We meet with the eyes of history upon us and the profound questions before us. It's simple. Will we act? Will we do what is necessary? Will we seize the enormous opportunity before us? Or will we condemn future generations to suffer?
Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Monday, November 1st, 2021. Welcome to day 286. Joe Manchin refused to endorse Biden's $1.75 trillion social policy and climate package, saying that he wants time to thoroughly understand the impact that it will have on our national debt, our economy, and the American people. House Democratic leaders had planned to bring both the social safety net and a separate $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill for a vote this week. Manchin also rebuked liberal House Democrats for holding up a vote on the infrastructure legislation, saying it's all or nothing and their position doesn't seem to change unless we agree to everything. Enough is enough. Manchin added, holding that bill hostage is not going to work to get my support of what you want. The White House, meanwhile, said the House's plan is fully paid for, will reduce the deficit, and brings down costs for healthcare, childcare, elder care, and housing. Moving on, a majority of Supreme Court justices seem willing to let abortion providers in Texas challenge the state's abortion law, the most restrictive in the nation. The justices are considering two cases, one brought by abortion providers in Texas and the other by the Justice Department. The court's focus is not directly on abortion rights, but rather on an unusual provision designed to thwart legal challenges by making the law only enforceable by private citizens rather than the state government. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh said there's a loophole that's been exploited here, agreeing with Justice Elena Kagan, who said the entire purpose of the bill was to find a weakness in the armor of court precedent regarding judicial review. Justice Amy Coney Barrett added that the law was designed to prevent the abortion providers from presenting a full constitutional defense. The DOJ, meanwhile, argued that the Texas law conflicts with a constitutional right established by Roe v. Wade, warning that if the Texas law remains in effect, quote, no constitutional right is safe. No constitutional decision from this court is safe, end quote. Kavanaugh, however, characterized the Justice Department's lawsuit as irregular and unusual, asking what authority the federal government has to sue over a state law. Federal Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar responded and said the reason we've done it here is because the law is so unprecedented, extraordinary, and extraordinarily dangerous for our constitutional structure. Moving on, Biden warned world leaders at a global climate summit that climate change is already ravaging the world, saying that we are standing at an inflection point in world history. Biden said the COP26 summit in Glasgow, Scotland, widely seen as the most important international climate negotiations since the 2015 Paris Climate Accord, kicks off what Biden called a decisive decade for combating climate change, which he sees as an existential threat to human existence as we know it. Biden warned that, quote, none of us can escape the worst that is yet to come if we fail to seize this moment, end quote. National climate pledges currently remain too weak to collectively meet the 2015 Paris Agreement goals to keep average global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Biden also apologized for the U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord under Trump, saying, I guess I shouldn't apologize, but I do. Back home, new documents show that during the January 6 Capitol insurrection, a Trump attorney blamed Mike Pence for the violence for refusing to block the certification of Trump's election loss. Quote, the siege is because you and your boss did not do what was necessary to allow this to be aired in a public way so that the American people can see for themselves what happened, John Eastman wrote to Greg Jacob, Pence's chief counsel. Eastman sent the email while Pence, Jacob, and other advisors were under guard in a secure area. Rioters, meanwhile, chanted, hang Mike Pence while storming the Capitol complex. And finally, Trump is trying to prevent January 6 investigators from accessing handwritten memos from his chief of staff, as well as call logs, files of top aides, White House visitor records, and drafts of election-related speeches. This, according to a court filing that the National Archives revealed. Trump has tried to block roughly 750 documents out of nearly 1,600. Among them are hundreds of pages from, quote, multiple binders of the former press secretary Kayleigh McEnany which is made up almost entirely of talking points and statements related to the 2020 election, end quote. The records also include 3 handwritten notes from then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows about the events of January 6, including 2 pages that list briefings and telephone calls about the Electoral College certification. Trump sued to block their release on October 15th and has asked a federal judge to issue an emergency order blocking the National Archives from transmitting them to the committee. And in the polls, The Washington Post and The Guardian say 30% of Republicans believe violence may be necessary to, quote, save our country, end quote, compared to just 11% of Democrats and 17% of independents. Among those who believe the 2020 election was stolen from Trump, which it wasn't, 39% support resorting to violence. NPR and Marist say 33% of Republicans say they will trust the results of the 2024 presidential election regardless of who wins, compared to 82% of Democrats who say the same. Overall, 62% of Americans say they'll trust the results of the election. 81% of Americans believe there is a serious threat to democracy, including 89% of Republicans, 80% of independents, and 79% of Democrats. ABC News says 32% of Americans think the infrastructure and social spending bills will hurt people like them, while 25% think they'll be helped, and 18% think the bills won't make any difference. Overall, 69% of Americans say they know little to nothing about what's in both bills. And NBC News says 42% of Americans approve of the job Joe Biden is doing as president, down from 53% in April. 54% say they disapprove of Biden's performance, up 6 points since August. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditas.